I often wonder about the nature of freedom in the world we live in. Do we truly have it, or is it just a carefully constructed illusion? Look around. The world is divided between those who hold immense wealth and those who must work tirelessly just to survive. And while we celebrate our democratic systems and personal liberties, there's a silent truth lurking beneath the surface. Power is not evenly distributed. It's concentrated in the hands of the few who control wealth, resources, and the systems that shape our lives. This isn't just an economic issue, it's a question of human dignity, fairness, and the very structure of our society. Let's start by considering a simple question: why does inequality exist? Is it a necessary feature of human society, or have we simply allowed it to grow unchecked, normalized it, and even romanticized it? We hear phrases like hard work pays off, or you can achieve anything if you try hard enough. But is that true, or is it just a comforting lie we tell ourselves while the game is rigged from the start? Think about it. If you're born into wealth, the doors to opportunity are open before you even take your first steps. Education, healthcare, social connections, all of it is handed to you. But if you're born into poverty, the struggle begins before you even understand what struggle means. This isn't a critique of individuals who are rich. It's not about envy or resentment. It's about the systems that allow such drastic inequality to exist in the first place. When we talk about the rich, we're not just talking about people who happen to have more money than others. We're talking about the mechanisms, the rules, the laws, the ideologies that ensure they stay rich while others remain poor. And this is where Marxism becomes relevant. Not because it's a perfect ideology, but because it forces us to ask questions that are often uncomfortable: who benefits from the way things are? Who suffers? And most importantly, is this the best we can do? Karl Marx argued that the foundation of inequality lies in the very structure of capitalism. He saw it not just as an economic system, but as a way of organizing society that inherently divides people into two groups: those who own the means of production, the capitalists, and those who sell their labor to survive, the workers. This division isn't just about money, it's about power. If you control the resources, the factories, the land, the technology, you control the rules of the game.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
And if you don't, you're left with little choice but to play along, selling your time, your energy, and in many ways your humanity. Let's pause for a moment and think about work. What does it mean to work? For most of us, it means giving up a significant portion of our lives to earn money so we can afford the basics: food, shelter, healthcare. But here's the catch: the value of what we produce as workers is often far greater than what we're paid. That's where profit comes from. The difference between the value we create and the wages we receive goes to the owners of capital. This is what Marx called exploitation. It's not a conspiracy, it's built into the system. The more profit a company makes, the more it reinforces this dynamic. And the bigger the gap between what the worker produces and what they earn, the more wealth accumulates at the top. Now, you might say, but isn't this just how business works? Isn't profit necessary for innovation and growth? And to some extent, that's true. Profit drives investment, and investment can lead to progress. But at what cost? When profit becomes the sole measure of success, everything else, human well-being, environmental sustainability, social cohesion, takes a back seat. Workers are pushed harder, paid less, and replaced by machines or cheaper labor whenever possible. Communities are uprooted, and the planet is plundered, all in the name of economic growth. Here's a question for you: how much is enough? For the billionaire who owns multiple yachts, private jets, and mansions, at what point does wealth stop being about security or comfort and start being about power? Because that's what extreme wealth ultimately buys: influence. It buys the ability to shape laws, to control media narratives, to fund campaigns, and to ensure that the system continues to work in your favor. And this power isn't just theoretical, it has real consequences for all of us. When the rich lobby for tax breaks, it's the rest of society that has to make up the difference. When they push for deregulation, it's our air, water, and safety that are compromised. When they hoard wealth, it's the public services, schools, hospitals, infrastructure that suffer. Some argue that the rich deserve their wealth because they've earned it. But let's examine that claim. Did they really earn it, or did they benefit from a system that was already skewed in their favor? Think about inheritance. A significant portion of wealth at the top isn't created, it's passed down. And even for those who did earn their fortunes, how much of their success was made possible by the labor of others? The workers who built their businesses, the taxpayers who funded the roads and schools and public services that allowed their companies to thrive, these are the people who create value. Yet they often see only a small fraction of the rewards. This brings us to a deeper issue, the myth of meritocracy. We're told that capitalism rewards hard work and innovation, that anyone can rise to the top if they're talented enough. But is that really true? If meritocracy were real, why do so many people remain trapped in poverty despite working long hours at difficult jobs? Why do wealth and privilege so often stay concentrated in the same families, generation after generation? The truth is, the playing field isn't level. Education, healthcare, housing, these basic necessities are often out of reach for those who need them most. And without them, it's almost impossible to break free from the cycle of poverty. But let's go even further. What does it mean to be free in a capitalist society? Are we free simply because we can choose where to work or what to buy? Or is freedom something deeper, something that requires not just individual choice but collective empowerment? If you're spending most of your waking hours working a job you hate just to pay the bills, are you truly free? If your voice is drowned out by the interests of the wealthy and powerful, do you really have a say in how society is run? Marx believed that true freedom could only come when workers collectively own and control the means of production. This doesn't mean abolishing all private property or forcing everyone to live the same way. It means creating a system where the fruits of our labor are shared more equally, where decisions about production and distribution are made democratically, and where people have the time and resources to pursue their passions, care for their families, and contribute to their communities. But this raises a tough question: is such a system possible? History has shown us that attempts to create Marxist societies have often gone horribly wrong. From the Soviet Union to Maoist China, we've seen how centralized power can lead to oppression, corruption, and violence. Does this mean Marx was wrong? Or does it mean we've misunderstood his ideas, or failed to implement them in ways that truly reflect their spirit? I don't have all the answers, and I don't think anyone does. But what I do know is that the status quo isn't working for most people. The gap between rich and poor is growing. The planet is nearing its breaking point, and millions of people are stuck in jobs that drain their energy, creativity, and sense of purpose. If we don't question the systems that allow this to happen, we risk becoming complicit in our own exploitation. So where do we go from here? How do we build a world that's fairer, more just, and more humane? It starts with recognizing that the current system isn't inevitable. It was created by people, and it can be changed by people. But change requires courage. It requires us to challenge deeply held beliefs about wealth, success, and power. It requires us to imagine alternatives, even when they seem impossible. And it requires us to stand together, because the forces we're up against are powerful, and they won't give up their privilege without a fight. This isn't just about economics, it's about what kind of society we want to live in. Do we want a world where a small elite hoards wealth and power while the rest struggle to get by? Or do we want a world where everyone has a chance to thrive, where our collective resources are used to benefit all of us, not just the few at the top? I'll stop here for now, but I'm not done yet. If you'd like me to continue, let me know, and we'll dive deeper into the implications of Marx's ideas, the challenges we face, and the possibilities for a better future. When we think about inequality, it's easy to focus on its most visible manifestations, the billionaire flaunting their wealth while workers struggle to pay rent, the luxury yachts parked alongside crumbling public schools. The grotesque accumulation of resources by a handful of individuals while millions live without access to basic health care. But inequality isn't just about wealth and income, it's about power, opportunity, and the deeper ways in which our society is structured to perpetuate these gaps. It's about the chains we wear, often invisible, that keep us divided, dependent, and powerless against forces larger than ourselves. Let's talk about dependency. We like to think of ourselves as independent, as free individuals who can chart our own paths in life. But how free are we, really? If you rely on a paycheck to survive, and let's face it, most of us do, then your freedom is already conditional. You're dependent on someone else to hire you, to determine your wages, your hours, your benefits. You're dependent on a system that prioritizes profit over people, that views your labor as a resource to be exploited rather than a contribution to be valued. And if you lose your job, your livelihood disappears. Your ability to pay for housing, food, healthcare, all of it hangs by a thread. This isn't freedom. It's a form of economic coercion. You may not have a master in the traditional sense, but you're still at the mercy of forces beyond your control. You can't choose not to participate in this system unless you're willing to risk homelessness, hunger, or worse. And the irony is, the very people who benefit most from this system, the wealthy elite, are the ones who claim to champion individual freedom. But whose freedom are they really defending? Certainly not yours. Take a moment to consider the role of corporations in our lives. They're everywhere. They produce the goods we consume, provide the jobs we depend on, and even shape the laws that govern us through lobbying and political influence. But who controls these corporations? A small group of executives and shareholders. They make the decisions what to produce, how to produce it, where to cut costs, and they reap the rewards. The workers? They're left with whatever crumbs are deemed sufficient to keep them coming back. And yet, despite this imbalance, we're told that corporations are the engines of progress, that their success benefits us all. But does it? Sure, corporations create jobs, but at what cost? How many of those jobs are secure, well-paying, and fulfilling? How many more are exploitative, precarious, and dehumanizing? How often do we see companies lay off thousands of workers while executives receive massive bonuses? How often are profits prioritized over safety, dignity, and the environment? Here's a thought experiment for you. Imagine a workplace where every employee, not just the executives and shareholders, has an equal say in how the business is run. Imagine a system where the profits generated by a company are distributed fairly among all those who contribute to its success, rather than being funneled to the top. Imagine a world where decisions about production and investment are made democratically, with the well-being of workers and communities at the forefront. Does that sound radical, or does it simply sound fair? This brings us back to the question of ownership. Under capitalism, the means of production, factories, farms, technology, infrastructure are privately owned. This is what gives the wealthy their power. They don't just own things, they own the ability to create wealth, to shape markets, to decide who gets what and on what terms. And because they own these means of production, They also own your labor, in a sense. When you work for someone else, you're not just selling your time, you're giving up control over the value you create. That value becomes their property, to use as they see fit. But it doesn't have to be this way. Marx argued that workers should own the means of production collectively. This doesn't mean abolishing personal property, it means reimagining ownership in a way that prioritizes cooperation over competition, fairness over exploitation. It means recognizing that the wealth of a society is created by all of us, and it should belong to all of us, not just a privileged few. Of course, this idea is often dismissed as unrealistic or utopian. We're told that collective ownership would stifle innovation, that it would lead to inefficiency and chaos. But is that really true? Or is it just propaganda designed to protect the status quo? After all, there are already examples of successful worker cooperatives, where employees share ownership and decision-making power. These businesses aren't just viable, they're often more resilient, more equitable, and more fulfilling for the people involved. So why aren't they the norm? Because the current system isn't designed to support them. It's designed to concentrate wealth and power, not to distribute it. And this concentration of wealth has another dangerous consequence. It creates a feedback loop. The more wealth you have, the more power you can wield to protect and expand that wealth. You can lobby for tax breaks, deregulation, and subsidies. You can fund political campaigns and manipulate public opinion. You can control the narrative, shaping how people think about wealth, inequality, and the nature of the system itself. This is why the rich keep getting richer, while the rest of us are left behind. But let's dig deeper. What does this inequality do to us, not just as individuals, but as a society? It divides us. It pits us against each other. Workers compete for jobs, for promotions, for scraps from the table, while the wealthy sit back and enjoy the spectacle. This isn't an accident, it's a feature of the system. Divide and conquer. Keep the masses distracted, resentful, and afraid, and they'll never unite to challenge the status quo. Think about it, how often do we blame each other for problems that are systemic in nature? Immigrants are accused of stealing jobs, when in reality it's corporations that outsource labor to maximize profits. Low-income families are shamed for relying on welfare, while billionaires exploit tax loopholes to hoard their wealth. Public school teachers are scapegoated for failing education systems, while funding is slashed and resources are drained. These narratives are designed to keep us fighting among ourselves, rather than questioning the structures that create these problems in the first place. And then there's the psychological toll. Living in a highly unequal society affects how we see ourselves and others. It fosters feelings of inadequacy, envy, and resentment. It creates a sense of competition that permeates every aspect of our lives, from our careers to our relationships. It erodes trust, solidarity, and community. And it leaves us with a gnawing sense of insecurity, as though no matter how hard we work, it will never be enough. But it's not just the poor and working class who suffer. Even the rich are trapped in their own way. Their wealth isolates them, distorts their worldview, and often leaves them feeling unfulfilled. They're constantly striving for more money, more power, more status, because the system they benefit from is built on endless accumulation. But what's the end game? What's the point of accumulating more wealth than you could ever possibly use? Here's a question I want you to consider. What does it mean to live a good life? Is it about accumulating wealth and possessions? Is it about climbing the social ladder, no matter the cost? Or is it about something deeper: connection, purpose, and the ability to contribute to something larger than yourself? If we continue to structure our society around the pursuit of profit, are we undermining our ability to live truly meaningful lives? This is where Marx's concept of alienation becomes so important. In a capitalist system, workers are alienated not just from the products of their labor, but from themselves, each other, and the natural world. When your work is reduced to a means of survival rather than an expression of your creativity and humanity, you lose something essential. When you're forced to compete with others for scarce resources, you lose the sense of solidarity that makes community possible. And when profit takes precedence over sustainability, you lose your connection to the planet that sustains us all. So what's the alternative? How do we break free from this cycle of dependency, division, and alienation? It's not about tearing everything down, it's about rethinking the foundations of our society. It's about recognizing that the way things are isn't the way they have to be. It's about imagining and building a world where wealth and power are shared more equitably, where work is fulfilling rather than exploitative, and where our relationships with each other and the planet are based on cooperation rather than competition.